When it comes down to it, Chris Jericho will always be considered an all-timer. His level of commitment to his characters and wrestling ability is incredible and pretty admirable. He's so driven and hard-headed even when the situation doesn't benefit him. Jericho came up in a time that wasn't kind to the shorter wrestlers, but Y2J had great charisma and easily stood out amongst his peers in ECW and WCW because he knew everything he wanted to be, from the character to his in-ring style. He was very forward-thinking during his career and self-aware to understand if something didn't work, and he reinvented himself time after time. I called Chris Jericho the Kanye West of professional wrestling because he understood when to change, even if said character didn't get old or stale. He left WCW at the right time, took many hiatuses from WWE at the perfect moment, but then he took a bigger leap and left the company entirely to embark on a brave journey. He went to New Japan. Jericho in New Japan was fresh and helped give his career variety. He got to face Kenny Omega, Kazuchika Okada, and Hiroshi Tanahashi. It was bonus stars to an already legendary career. Jericho of 2018 is much different to 2025, and some people almost can't comprehend it. For me, he's in my top 10 favorite wrestlers ever, and that's because he's the most versatile wrestler. He fits in the Attitude Era, WCW, ECW, WWE itself, and the world of professional wrestling all around. But then he took another opportunity, the opportunity to be the leader of All Elite Wrestling. Tony Khan noticed the rise of the indie circuit and the hunger and yearning of an actual number 2 promotion. The mid-10s indie scene was absolute insanity. It was very star-studded and full of talent who were driven by nothing other than success. Jericho strongly considered returning to WWE and even had a conversation with Vince, who couldn't comprehend Jericho actually signing the contract. He thought it was some nonsense. But AEW is a very real thing, and I remember in November 2018 reading an article about trademarks being filed for this thing called All Elite Wrestling. It was an entirely different vibe initially because it sounded like an indie thing with the Elite leading the promotion, but it was much more than that. This company wanted to be broadcasted initially on Access TV, but it was much more than that. Professional wrestling on TNT again is insane, and Jericho was a strong believer of the project. He was an integral part of AEW early on because he was more of a bigger star compared to everyone else. Jericho featured in Dancing with the Stars and dabbled in the television world, and AEW needed some actual names to get the deal. The only person they tried to sign was CM Punk, but he wasn't interested. Dean Ambrose was still under WWE contract at the time, and that left Jericho. Jericho is the guy who helped close the deal and bring in wrestling back to Turner Network. The TV network guys don't know who Baron Corbin is, they're not gonna know the Elite, but they know Jericho. He was set up in an important role with the first AEW event being Double or Nothing. Jericho's first match with the promotion was a part of his road to the AEW World Championship. The winner would get their title shot at All Out. His opponent, Kenny Omega. Both guys had an intense feud dating back to a year and a half earlier. Jericho took some strange measures to get in Omega's head, and early AEW really had a charm to it. It didn't know its identity really, but it was kind of like WCW and ECW. The match here was good, but the result and the post-match were more impactful, with Jon Moxley debuting after Chris Jericho's victory. It was some great scenes. Jericho was desperate to win the title. His opponent was Hangman Adam Page. Hangman was in another depression era, with this being his motivation to get him out of his rut and establish himself in the history books. Now with this one, very enjoyable. Hangman was almost too hungry for his own good as opposed to Jericho, who coasted with his experience and composure. He also thought that his legend would mean nothing if he lost to Hangman here. Jericho was dominant. He was slow but meticulous in his efforts, and he did get busted open at one point and lose sight, with Hangman also having a Warrior-esque performance, but he was still in it. There was this great moment here with the buckshot straight to the codebreaker, and it was so good. It was a big story with Hangman messing up the match. He had it won but decided to be certain with the Deadeye, but this only gave way to a Judas effect, and Chris Jericho was crowned the first ever AEW World Champion. This was a great decision at the time, seeing as Jericho had plenty of name value. It was an easy one. Then he lost the title after going to a steakhouse and chaos unfolded. The guy was out of his mind drunk, which is a common thing in Jericho's life, and he accidentally lost the belt. It was a hilarious week. I remember he was talking about how he's Le Champion and a little bit of the bubbly, but now he's tweeting about losing his belt. He didn't have to wait long for his first challenger, Cody. AEW was doing things with the winning record, and it was sports-based. I still hear sports-based to this day, but it's not executed as strong as it was here. And this story was a simple one. We're gonna explain it. Jericho was casual and confident. He made fun of Cody, saying he didn't like him or his family, and behind him was a big plan, a plan to ensure his dominance and relevancy. Jericho attacked him in the first Dynamite episode and obliterated him to the point where Rhodes was seeking retribution later that night during the big main event. Santana, Ortiz, and Jericho against the Elite. This was once again chaotic and all over the place. Cody, Dustin Rhodes interfered, Jon Moxley, to top it all off, Jericho's insurance policy made their debut. It was Jake Hager. This was a bit of a big deal at the time. It actually dominated the headlines. And I'm not saying Hager was this amazing talent, but this was back when everyone thought said person was underutilized in WWE and that they should give them a chance. And these 5 men were aligned with intention, and Jericho called them the Inner Circle. He called Sammy Guevara a Spanish god. Santana and Ortiz are freaks, and watching this, Jericho is just effortlessly charismatic. The guy was talking gold with every second and he didn't even realize it. Although he has a big ego, so maybe he did. Le Champion took a jab and said, "We the people sucks and is gone. It's a bad idea from creative." And this is the first memorable quote in AEW, I believe. The Inner Circle were making their mark in AEW with the Elite failing to put a dent in their dominance. And I just want to say, there was so many aura moments in the first 2 months of AEW. Those hype moments straight from prime WCW. And I forgot to mention, there was a face MJF. Almost a horrific sight, especially in this era. Because 2023 MJF is a bit different. But here, this version of him as a face? No, it was just odd. But the segment was great with everyone just having an issue with each other. Jericho's first title defense came and it was against Darby Allin. Le Champion thought he was a disgrace, guy coming out in a skateboard, and since Jericho saw him as a street thug, he decided to make it a Philly street fight for their title match. Darby took the pain, of course, which is a common occurrence. Some great moments throughout it though. He was handcuffed, but it didn't stop him from doing his usual offense. And he was never close to winning this match since he was handcuffed, but it's a good watch. It's funny how Darby still hasn't changed, and if anything, he's taken more risks. The Inner Circle were causing mischief. They interrupted a Cody promo where he was about to yap about his motivations, and he said that this isn't like the other company where there's an invisible wall. He could come up there and fight them. The champion, or Le Champion, called him an entitled millennial bitch, and this is something he commonly said during this feud. It was hilarious. Jericho poked fun at him and MJF, asking who wears a scarf, which is ironic, but that's the joke obviously. But this nonsense would soon come to a close after DDP proved to be the great equalizer for Cody. Jericho had worked well with his experience, so why not try out the same strategy when it came to Cody? He made this match a much heavier burden on the soul of the American Nightmare. He said that if he loses, he's not as good as these jackasses claim he is. Sammy Guevara and Jake Hager took advantage of this time to attack Cody's brother, Dustin Rhodes. Rhodes was destroyed and obliterated. They took him out, used the limo door to destroy his arm, and at this point, Le Champion was doing whatever he wanted. He even brought in Virgil, had this big video package where he had his family friend claim she always knew he was going to be an AEW champion. Guevara called him the youngest champion in history, and this was a bit of a funny promo. The poor guy has to wake up every morning and realize how great he is. Damn, it's tough. Cody decided that if he loses the match, then he'll never challenge for the title, and this is an image to ponder about. The image feels so right. When you look at it, it feels like it brings a timeline that's logical, sound, and compelling. But it just wasn't to be. Jericho and Rhodes had a simple build. Cody suffering a setback with his brother being taken out, the fact that he's so desperate to bring the world title back to the Rhodes family, and the story was built entirely under the struggles of Cody. It was a horrible decision for him to put the stipulation. Nobody asked for it, not to mention that he's already trying his best to be like a big star in the 80s. What better way to follow tradition by booking yourself to be champion? He took issue with Jericho dismissing his accomplishments. The fact that he claims he's born with a silver spoon in his mouth when his own father was a hockey player in the NHL. He even called him a dick. This was a tremendous promo. Sounds like an 80s promo at first. Then Rhodes turns up the emotion to sell this match and help you comprehend why this match means so much to him. I know people say, oh, he turned his back on AEW and whatnot, but here he looks genuine and honest with his intentions. Like in that moment, he was all elite. There was no thought of WWE in his mind unless he's gonna trash them or throw a jab at them. The match at Full Gear was good. Cody's grand entrance is one I wished followed him to WWE. The intro's just too good, and with the way the pyro was set up, the damn guy looked immune to fire. It was a bit of a heelish entrance he used to have, but that's Cody Rhodes for you. Chris Jericho found himself struggling to deal with Cody early on. He wasn't trying to get in a wrestling match with him, and in addition, Rhodes had an aerial threat. Not so much a lot, but he could just bounce off the ropes a bit if he wanted to. The fighting advantage was also by his side and intention behind working the arm. He took a huge risk when he didn't need to, and that's all Chris Jericho needed because Cody was at a severe disadvantage with the blood. He was lost and out of it with Jericho doing whatever he saw fit. The thing that makes this match is the story behind it. Cody had to swim back to the shore only to get back to his journey to climb a mountain. His mother watching her son getting obliterated and destroyed in the battle is another thing to mention. It was a classic story. More and more obstacles being thrown in his way. A dirty heel, his guy, his mother watching on with a lot of emotion and the blood. Jericho honored Eddie Guerrero the week of his death here, and then Rhodes integrated well into the match even with all these disadvantages. It was well timed in bringing the emotion out of the crowd and raising their hopes. One of Cody's gifts was his storytelling. He wasn't rated as the best in-ring performer in terms of action, but he made every second count. And this match got to a point where Jericho was dominant. He was putting in the damage when MJF threw in the towel. The fans were pissed. Rhodes didn't give up. His hope was still there, but you couldn't say the same for MJF. Then he proceeded to turn on him. Good match. I don't think it's one to talk about too much, but I enjoyed the story they told. I do wish there was more action though. Le Champion was ready to bring more gold to the Inner Circle. He said he was out to beat Rhodes and he did. MJF trashed Cody and then said that he's good without the Inner Circle. Jericho likened MJF to himself and his parents probably got horny during a match of his against Juventud 20 years ago. MJF had no idea who Juventud was. And then they bickered over the Inner Circle. Nobody wanted to budge and look desperate for the other. They then said Cody was the biggest dork in AEW, and it was a funny segment. Both guys have a lot of chemistry with each other. Cody ran in there only to get taken out by the debuting Wardlow. So it was working well for Chris Jericho and MJF. The main event tag match with SCU was decent. It saw Jericho suffer his first pinfall loss in AEW, and it was Scorpio Sky. He was the first man to do it. And Le Champion was incensed. He lost it. He went insane. He cooled down the following week and apologized for his actions. Well, not really. He had Jake Hager apologize. It was a funny one. Scorpio Sky, the champion, on the ropes, and feeling like Jericho had something to prove on the night of his celebration next week, he decided, you know what, I'm gonna challenge Scorpio Sky and put my title on the line. Sky didn't want the title match, seeing as this is Chris Jericho, but it was all a game to lure him in to make the match. A very entertaining segment followed up of Jericho getting his well-deserved celebration. Half of these were circle jerks, but it was always funny, and the heels would get jumped afterwards. Here they bullied Justin Roberts, and SCU came to the rescue. Their match was decent, and it served to showcase Sky to the wider audience. Jericho won, but Jon Moxley was the guy waiting for him. He dealt with Kenny Omega, and now he was looking forward to the title. This is a story that was bound to happen, seeing as Mox was positioned as one of the most dangerous wrestlers in the entire promotion, and naturally, his hunger for gold would show. Jericho, meanwhile, created or brought back the lexicon of Le Champion. He called it the wrong thing. It's not the lexicon. Excalibur was stressing this on commentary, and said that the list is from 2016 and that they should get out of that time period. Ironic. He wrote a list of all kinds of people, and for Jericho, he didn't give a damn about any of these people. He was making fun of them, insulting them, from the likes of Kenny Omega to Jungle Boy. He was so confident that he told Jungle Boy that he couldn't last 10 minutes in the ring with him, and that was enough for the challenge. Meanwhile, the champion, or Le Champion, finally went face-to-face with Jon Moxley. He wasn't happy about getting dropped at Double or Nothing, but it showed him that Mox had that intensity and fire. He said that Moxley finally understands his worth, and now he decides to go face-to-face with him again, because in Jericho's eyes, this is like a way for Jon Moxley to test himself. If he stands in the ring with Jericho, it feels like he has something to prove. Jericho saw this as an opportunity to ask him to join the Inner Circle. As for Jungle Boy, he proved that he could keep Jericho down for the 3 combo. With regards to this match, it was a great way of showcasing Jungle Boy Jack Perry. There was once a time where the guy had plenty of upside and potential, and there was a special novelty around him and Sammy Guevara. Jericho whooped his ass here and failed to beat him in time before demanding 5 more minutes. He ended up walking out without bothering to try again because of how fired up Jungle Boy was. He wanted an answer from Jon Moxley and believed he knew what it was. He obviously believed he would join the Inner Circle. Jericho was offering the world and then some to get Jon Moxley to join. Leadership role, 49% of the Inner Circle LLC name. It's worth nothing now, unfortunately. A 4GT, everything. Unfortunately for Jericho, none of this did anything for him. He wasn't a man that could be bought. If he was, then his intention to come to AEW was to make money, but even then, he joined. Mox sold out and the fans were convinced. He wanted this for the best of his career. He saw what the Inner Circle was, the most dominant entity in professional wrestling and all elite wrestling, and he was celebrating. He was ready to drive that 4GT, pop a little bit of the bubbly, as Jericho says. But this turned out to be an elaborate ruse, and Mox destroyed a bottle over Jericho's head after telling him that he wants his belt. He was still taking the car though, and the match was officially made for AEW's Revolution pay-per-view. Chris Jericho, Le Champion, the Painmaker, the greatest of all time, Le Champion, up against Jon Moxley. It's for the AEW World Championship. The Inner Circle did not let this slide at all. Jericho stabbed him in the eye with a spike and blinded him. Chris Jericho said he told Mox's mom that it's his fault that he got the spike in the eye, and Le Champion made fun of him, saying he wasn't capable of blinking with both eyes, yet thinks he could beat him. He still wanted to fight, so Jericho told him that he could deal with the Inner Circle and Santana and Ortiz's thugs. He had every kind of nicknames for all of them. Jake Hager, Sammy Guevara. With Santana and Ortiz, he used to call them hoodlum and thugs, and they were just happy to be called that. This feud would continue to intensify with Mox stabbing Santana in the eye. Le Champion was so incensed that he brought in Jeff Cobb from New Japan to deal with him. Cobb was a highly touted talent at the time and actually had some mystique and aura to him. Moxley's chances were dwindling, seeing as he had to wear an eye patch, had to face the likes of Jeff Cobb. It was tough on him. He still had to deal with Jeff Cobb right before Revolution. While Moxley barely beat him, he still had to deal with Jericho's guys. Luckily, Dustin Rhodes and Darby Allin made the save. Jericho, meanwhile, engaged in a weigh-in with a challenger that went awry and horribly for the Inner Circle. His nose was busted, but he still had it in him to hit a paradigm shift on top of the scale. This was very good, although that's a bit of a 2020 perspective. Moxley's motivations were beyond materialistic things, which is definitely Jericho's motivation among other things. I really like Mox's presentation in the early days of AEW. Almost like a leaf in the wind, wherever he goes, chaos follows. Doesn't matter who is in his way, good guy or bad guy, and his morals are consistent. They're basically trying to make him a bit like Stone Cold Steve Austin, and he obviously loves this badass character, you know, he just loves it. This is one of the most important and impactful AEW matches ever. easily. Jericho had a cool entrance with Judas. I almost thought he was a face for a moment because of how cool it was. As JR explained, Jericho saw Moxley as nothing more than a challenger. While he was a thorn in his side throughout the build, at the end of the day, Chris Jericho had seen it all. Jericho took a big risk of getting into a brawl with the challenger, but that eye was a big red target and all Jericho had to do was go after him. He beat him up so bad that Jericho rang the bell to declare himself the winner. Mox did find his way out of this struggle and even used some of the submission skills he learned from Randy Couture. It felt like Jericho had a slight step ahead of the challenger but wasn't doing well enough to drift away. Even with the help of the inner circle, Ortiz sold this like he was clotheslined by an invisible wrestler after Aubrey Edwards ejected him. Guevara managed to drop Mox with the belt after the inner circle were ejected, but despite this, he kicked out. Mox managed to connect with the paradigm shift after avoiding the Judas effect, and this is when he revealed that his eye wasn't as bad as he made it out to be because he could see from it. Another paradigm shift. 1, 2, 3, new champion. Jon Moxley ends Chris Jericho's title reign after 6 months. Solid match. I didn't enjoy it a lot. It was a different time, and if a main event like this happened today for AEW, it would be considered disappointing, but they told the simple story, and it was a match that wouldn't look out of place in any era. Moxley as champion was very necessary, and you got to respect Chris Jericho for being a team player throughout this run. He made Scorpio Sky, Jungle Boy, and Darby Allin look good. His segments mostly involved him getting his ass beat, and while the run is not some world beater, Chris Jericho is the perfect first champion for All Elite Wrestling. His segments were so entertaining, and I actually don't see many segments as entertaining as Jericho's today. It kind of hurts, but he is an all-time talent, so maybe we shouldn't be expecting these kinds of segments so often. He was very silly throughout his segments, but it works because of his relevancy throughout the years. You know, one moment he could be the painmaker, the next he could be talking about a little bit of the bubbly. And as a character, Jericho just had the touch during this title reign. I think he saved up all his powers to fully go all out during this run, which then leads to him severely deteriorating afterwards. There's a reason why everyone was lining up to glaze Chris Jericho one by one, including me in 2020, because the guy was aging well. Despite the fact that his ring skill decreased, he could still coast by well enough with his character. And from a character standpoint, this title reign was great. It's not my favorite run overall as a title reign. It's actually MJF's title reign, surprisingly to you probably, but it made a huge impact and allowed for All Elite Wrestling to understand the direction they're going and how they're going to reach their destination, which was Hangman winning the title. They had the idea as evident by Cody saying AEW was booked deep into the first 2 years despite it at this point being only a couple of months in. Chris Jericho did his job well. They told him ride it out, ride out this run, have a good run, just show everyone what AEW is all about. And he did. But it was up to Mox, who ended up carrying the title throughout COVID and of course Omega and then Hangman and then crazy stuff going on with the title. But it was a good first run, I'd say. My favorite match from this run was probably the Cody match. The match quality wasn't like out of this world here or anything like that, but I liked the story of that match and the way it ended. So yeah. As for the segments, yeah, Jericho was on fire here. He was almost untouchable as a character in AEW at the time, which is crazy, but that's how it was. So yeah. Alright, what did you guys think of Chris Jericho's title reign? Please comment down below, and that's it for this video. Make sure you hit the code breaker on the like button and perhaps the Judas effect on the subscribe button. Peace, I'm out.